The story begins in a dark room, where the protagonist Fang Xiaolun suddenly wakes up from a dream. However, the moment he opens his eyes, his world changes. Everyone has an extra egg on their head. The only difference is that while everyone else's eggs are white and flawless, his is completely black. What makes everything even stranger is that, on the black shell of the egg, a stopwatch is displayed in an alarming way. 11 hours, 54 minutes, and 13 seconds. With many questions on her mind, she goes to class, but what she finds is an even stranger scene. Everyone in the classroom has an egg on their head. He discreetly observes his companion Li Jin and whispers, "Do you really not see anything strange?" Li Jin frowns, looks around, and looks at him doubtfully. "See what? You've already asked me that several times today. Are you okay?" At this moment, Fang Xiaolun is sure. Those eggs, only he can see them. The whole school day goes by and the countdown in the black egg progresses silently, remaining only 5 hours and 46 minutes. During that time, countless speculations pass through his mind. What will happen to the egg when time runs out? It will explode, kill him, or hatch some kind of monster that will devour him. Fang Xiaolun observes the numbers on the black egg counting slowly, and several terrifying scenes cross her mind. But on second thought, death doesn't seem to be something you need to worry about. Thinking about that, he feels a certain relief, and his whole body instantly goes in a state of total indifference. Li Jin, who is nearby, sees his apathetic expression and can't help but pat him on the shoulder. "Hey, Xiaoluan, do you want to go to the wall with us tonight to get some fresh air?" Fang Xiaoluan looks at him lazily, with empty eyes. "Why go to the wall?" Li Jin speaks mysteriously in a low voice, his eyes full of emotion. Joshin found a huge red egg and hid it near the wall. A huge red egg. Fang Xiaolun's mood rises, and the tiredness in her body instantly disappears. Will it have something to do with his black egg? Li Jin continues, "We will meet at the West City Park at 19 tonight. Do you want to come?" Fang Xiaolun raises her hand to check the time and makes some calculations. At 19, there will still be about 3 hours left on the black egg timer, enough time. Without hesitation, he nods his head. "Yes, I'll come with you." At nightfall, exactly at 19, in Qingxi Park, Lin guides Fang Xiaolun to the meeting point. The night has already fallen, and an indescribable feeling of strangeness fills the air. Yao Tian looks at Fang Xiaolun and asks indifferently, "Who is this?" Lin smiles and pats Fang Xiaolun's shoulder. While presenting it, "Her name is Fang Xiaolun. He's on the same course as me. Since you said you wanted to have fun, I thought you could come with us." Joshin nods without showing emotion. "Then you're a newbie. Okay, everyone's here, let's go." Fang Xiaolun follows the group for a while, and, little by little, does not tea. Something strange. Yao Tian doesn't have an egg on his head. Her heart clenches, and she watches him discreetly. A disturbing thought involuntarily arises in his mind. Could it be that his egg has already broken? As if sensing her uneasiness, Lin reaches out and pats her on the shoulder, speaking in a relaxed tone. "Don't be afraid. Fear. There are so many people here. What could happen?" Fang Xiaolun's Adam's apple moves slightly. Although his doubts have not completely disappeared, he suppresses his vigilance for the time being, and continues to follow the group. Soon, they enter the radiation zone of the barrier. The air currents become dense, and the light around seems to distort slightly. There is an independent ecosystem here, and it is said that new biological chains are born regularly. However, since these ecosystems are relatively small, and do not directly affect the safety of the city, most people are not afraid of them. Someone in the group whispers, "The wall is just ahead." There was a hint of nervousness in his voice. The wall, a colossus that existed at the end of the world since the birth of Fang Xiaolun, was like a huge sphere. Perfectly round and impeccable, enveloping everyone inside it, like the most perfect prison between heaven, earth, countless without. Scientists devoted their lives to the study of the wall, but they never managed to unravel its secrets. Not even a scratch could be found on it, as it seemed to regenerate instantly. As if it did not allow external forces to corrupt it. There are countless rumors about the wall. Some say that someone managed to get through it and saw the outside world. But that's just an unconfirmed legend. If that legend were true, there would be people like them on the other side of the wall. And those people would be trying to get in here. While Fang Xiaolun was lost in these thoughts, Li Jin suddenly speaks, breaking the silence. "By the way, Tian He, where did you hide that huge red egg?" Hearing this, Zhao Tian suddenly shows a strange smile. Her eyes contain an indescribable emotion. In the next second, The back of his neck begins to distort slightly, like smoke, as if something is coming out of a cocoon. The skin was twisted, and the tissues seemed to break. Everyone watches in horror as, slowly, a red egg emerges from the back of Joshin's neck. The air seems to freeze, and everyone is paralyzed. Their faces of terror become more and more evident. Soon after, screams resonate everywhere, and the group disperses like an explosion. They push and run desperately, trying to get away from that strange scene as much as possible. Only Fang Xiaolun remains paralyzed in place. His body is tense. Cold sweat runs down his forehead. His voice comes out low and cautious. "What do you want?" Yao Tian smiles slightly, his expression terrifyingly calm. He reaches out his hand slowly and gently holds the red egg, his voice low and ominous. "Didn't you want to see the red egg? Now I showed it to you. This egg is a treasure. It allowed me to be reborn and see a different vision." His tone was that of one possessed by madness, and his eyes shone with an abnormal radiance. However, Fang Xiaolun was not the least bit interested. His voice was cold. "I don't care about rebirth or vision, I'm not interested." After saying that, he turned around without hesitation and ran. However, in the next second, Yao Tian's back suddenly twisted, and a pair of strange and elongated arms suddenly extended. Those hands were incredibly fast, and, like a viper, they instantly enveloped Fang Xiaolun's body. He didn't even have time to react before he was caught. Fear took over his body, and Fang Xiaolun struggled desperately, but in the next moment, he was pulled back forcefully. Fang Xiaolun was dragged back to Yao Tian's side, his heels scraping the ground, and leaving a long trail behind him. Yao Tian leaned closer, whispering in a low, ominous tone, "Tell me, why did my red egg react with you?" As soon as the words left his lips, the red egg on Joshin's palm trembled violently. The surface of the shell twisted and expanded. In the next second, 5 dark eyes suddenly opened, and then the eggshell broke, revealing a terrifying mouth. Fang Xiaolun stared at the strange egg. His throat tightened, his lips trembled slightly, shocked and unable to speak. When this egg turned like this, his heart raced and cold sweat ran down his face. Meanwhile, the red egg was slowly approaching the black egg above his head, as if it was being attracted by some invisible force. Fang Xiaolun's pupils contracted, and an alarm sounded in her mind. "He's not reacting to me, but to the black egg in me." In the next second, the red egg's mouth opened wide, revealing twisted tentacles. That advanced to bite into the black egg without hesitation. However, just as the red egg's sharp teeth were about too close, the black egg glowed with a strange light. In the next instant, the black egg's figure became blurred, as if it had been swallowed up by some kind of spatial distortion, and, in the blink of an eye, it appeared on top of the red egg. Soon after, the surface of the black egg twisted violently, and cracks spread like veins, making several arm-like tentacles grow. The tentacles spread out violently in the air, shining with a cold light, as if they were carrying some kind of unbreakable leaf. In the next second, the cold light cut the air as if splitting it in half. The red egg was instantly reduced to countless pieces. Fang Xiaolun was stunned, his heart beating wildly. His voice came out with a tone of disbelief. "My black egg is really so strong." On the ground, the fragments of the red egg scattered, and Yao Tian's body trembled slightly before collapsing on the ground, as if all of his strength had been drained away. Fang Xiaolun ran to check on him, his heart clenched as he extended his hand to feel Yao Tian's nose. There was no breathing. However, he did not realize that, behind him, a failure of the red egg was silently writhing. A sprout of meat slowly grew on the surface of the shell, twisting as if it had a life of its own. The tip of the bud swelled and gradually condensed into a dark orb. The orb trembled slightly and then fell slowly, hitting the ground. A faint click echoed. In the next moment, a twisted worm emerged from the black orb, slowly unfolding its strange limbs. Fang Xiaolun didn't notice it. His attention was still fixed on Yao Tian's fallen body, his heart racing. However, it was then that the strange worm began to tremble violently. Slowly, and in the next second, like a black bolt of lightning, it buried itself in Joshin's feet. His body instantly disappeared into the flesh, silently, as if it had never existed. In the next instant, Joshin's body began to violently writhe, his limbs convulsing as if he were doing electrocuted, his whole body pulled by an invisible force, his joints twisting at unnatural angles, and then he really stood up. Fang Xiaolun was stunned, watching incredulous, as Yao Tian's body underwent strange transformations before his eyes. His palms began to twist at some point, his knuckles cracked, flesh and blood gushing out, giving rise to several dark and sharp claws. But the scariest thing was that a deep circular hole suddenly opened up in his chest. Fang Xiaolun stared at the hole, and an indescribable feeling of intense restlessness took over her heart. Her lips trembled as she muttered, "What the hell is going on? Is that really a hole?" No, it looked more like a lock. While in shock, Joshin let out a low laugh. At first, it was just a tremor in his throat, but soon the laughter became louder and longer, until it turned into a strange moan. The home game is about to start. Fang Xiaolun came back to reality, feeling as if her heart had been squeezed tightly, her face changing drastically. Home game. What the hell is that? He looked at his black egg. The numbers kept decreasing, and the counter was showing 1 hour and 54 minutes. At that moment, Yao Tian's already mutated body slightly leaned forward. His voice was low and husky, and a distorted smile spread slowly around the corner of his mouth. The eggs around me are completely black. Unlike you, they are of one species. Different spice, isn't it? Fang Xiaolun frowned, took half a step back, and asked, cautiously, "What are you talking about? What do you mean by different species?" Zhao Tian let out a low laugh, his eyes deep and mysterious. Humans must have already noticed that the eggs of the people around them are all white, they are ingredients. Red eggs are soldiers. As for the black eggs, he paused, and the smile at the corner of his mouth widened. They are different. Fang Xiaolun stared at the black egg above her head, her heart invaded by fear. He muttered, "My black egg, is it an alien?" "That's right," Zhao Qian sneered, his madness becoming more and more apparent. "Aliens, for the red eggs, cannot be captured, but they can be hunted." However, he suddenly licked the corner of his mouth, his voice slowly decreasing. "I prefer to hunt." Before he could finish speaking, Yao Tian's figure suddenly shot up. Its sharp claws stood up, shining with a cold light, charged with a murderous intent, as they descended towards Fang Xiaolun's chest. Shh! The sound of tearing clothes exploded in the air. Fang Xiaolun felt a sharp pain in her chest, and her body was thrown backwards, hitting the ground. Fang Xiaolun gritted her teeth. The intense pain left him dazed for a moment, but he still forced himself to look up, fixing his eyes on his black egg. And growling, "Aren't you amazing? Why aren't you helping me?" However, Joshin burst into a laugh. His low laugh is charged with indescribable contempt. "Oh, did you really expect them to help you?" He slowly narrowed his eyes, and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his lips. "Ha ha, impossible. When we are in the form of independent eggs, we cannot directly attack humans, unless we merge. With you." Fang Xiaolun's face suddenly changed, and her pupils contracted slightly. Fusion. But before he could think about it anymore, Yao Tian's figure lunged at him again. Fang Xiaolun's heart raced, and she instinctively rolled to the side with all her might, narrowly avoiding. With the sharp claws descending at great speed, but Yao Tian did not stop for a second. Like a cat playing with its prey, he approached Fang Xiaolun, his smile becoming more and more cruel. "It's no use resisting, you can't escape." Fang Xiaolun was panting, her heart beating so hard it seemed. Bursting point. He ran as fast as he could while frantically scanning the surroundings, trying to find some counterattack opportunity. However, Joshin was incredibly fast. In a few seconds, he had already reached it. In the next moment, Joshin jumped up and launched a kick with all his might. Fang Xiaolun felt a sharp pain in her abdomen, and her entire body was thrown away, like a kite with the thread cut off, falling heavily to the ground. Intense pain exploded inside his body, as if his internal organs had been shaken and displaced, leaving him stunned. Damn it! He gritted his teeth and tried to get up, but he felt a cold murderous intent enveloping his back. Yao Tian's figure was already nearby, raising its menacing claws that glowed coldly as they descended directly towards his head. Fang Xiaolun's eyes reflected the sharp claws that were rapidly approaching, and his pupils suddenly contracted. "It's over. I'm going to die." At the critical moment, Fang Xiaolun's black egg suddenly emitted a strange wave. As if the surface of a lake had been stirred up by an invisible force, propagating in layers. Yao Tian's movements stopped instantly. His pupils trembled slightly, as if they were being suppressed by some force. His whole body was frozen in the air, with his claws a few millimeters from Fang Xiaolun's head. He was stunned, completely unprepared at this situation, but he reacted quickly and, despite the pain, rolled to the side and stood up. He stood up. Without thinking twice, he started running. He ran like crazy the whole way. The wind whistled in his ears, his heart beating violently. Half an hour later, Fang Xiaolun was still running. His clothes were soaked with sweat, but a feeling of uneasiness began to spread. How strange, because I haven't left the radiation zone yet. At that moment, among the treetops above his head, a vague figure quietly emerged. Hidden among the dense branches, he watched in silence. The man remained motionless, and, behind him, there was a strange egg floating in the air. That egg was different from all the ones I had seen before, and the strangest thing was that it really spoke for itself. "Master, that thing is completely black," and interrupted the time bomb. "I think it must be the egg of destruction." The man slightly narrowed his eyes, his gaze deep and calm, as he said, "Do not draw precise conclusions." Received. Let's see what happens. Fang Xiaolun didn't know how long she had been running, until a dark cave appeared in the distance. Without hesitation, he ran straight inside, and hid in the shadows. Only then was he finally able to catch his breath, and look up at the black egg above his head. A moment ago, that guy suddenly couldn't move. "You helped me, didn't you?" he asked in a low voice, still trembling, and murmured, "Thank you." However, when his gaze actually fell on the black egg, his pupils suddenly contracted, and his expression changed. "Wait, the time in the black egg. Why are there only 3 minutes left?" Her heart suddenly sank, and Fang Xiaolun gasped for breath. "I thought I still had enough time, but now the counter showed only 3 minutes remaining. It can't be. If this thing really explodes like a bomb, I'm sure I'll die if I'm still here." Fang Xiaolun instinctively wanted to run out of the cave, but as soon as she got up, she realized that her limbs seemed to be heavy as lead, without any strength. "What's going on?" He gritted his teeth and tried to take a step, but he couldn't even stand up. In the end, he only managed to slide back to the ground, leaning against the cold cave wall, and smiled bitterly. "It doesn't matter, if I'm going to die, it doesn't matter where." The counter on the black egg was still counting rapidly. 20 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Fang Xiaolun took a deep breath, closed her eyes and tensed up before tilting her head back and screaming. When the countdown reached 0, Fang Xiaolun suddenly opened her eyes. However, the expected explosion did not occur. The air was calm, and the cave plunged into a deathly silence. He stood motionless and looked around. His gaze slowly moved upwards, finally settling on the black egg. In the next second, his pupils contracted violently. On the top of the black egg, there was a key growing. Fang Xiaolun was filled with questions, her whole body paralyzed, muttering, What's going on?" A key. The black egg was gently spinning in the air and slowly floated up to Fang Xiaolun. As if indicating that he should pull the key, Fang Xiaolun swallowed saliva, her palms were sweating. She took a deep breath and cautiously extended her hand. And the moment his fingers touched the key, he felt an icy sensation. He applied a light pressure and pulled it out of the black egg. The instant the key came off, the counter numbers on the surface of the black egg suddenly trembled, spinning madly, as if they were out of control. Then, the numbers suddenly went to 0, and, in the next second, they came back at midnight. Fang Xiaolun's eyes widened in surprise, and he muttered, "Time has been reset." However, before he could reflect on it, heavy footsteps were heard outside the cave. In the midst of the deep darkness, a low and sinister voice slowly echoed out, accompanied by a distorted smile. "I found you." At the same time, in the shadows in the distance, 2 figures were silently observing everything that was happening inside the cave. The owner of the black and white egg slightly raised an eyebrow, while the egg, with its black and white stripes, slowly turned, emitting a mechanical sound. "This engineer's egg is really arrogant. He really dared to enter directly. Should we follow him?" The man pondered for a moment, his gaze cold and deep, before calmly replying, "Follow him. However, he should not notice our presence." Inside the cave, Fang Xiaolun looked up, her heart suddenly tensed. In the shadows of the cave entrance, a distorted figure slowly emerged. Yashin's face was covered by a horrendous smile, his eyes cold and bloodthirsty. His mouth slowly opened, revealing threatening teeth, while he whispered and laughed. We meet again. Fang Xiaolun was stunned, took a sharp step back and opened his eyes wide. Damn it. How did you find me? Joshin licked his dry lips, showing a bloodthirsty smile, and looked at him coldly. The smell of your blood is too strong. Fang Xiaolun felt a headache. He believed that he would finally be able to catch his breath after hiding in the cave, but this guy had tracked him down again. Things were already chaotic enough, and now he still wanted to cause more trouble. It definitely had to be eliminated. He threw a discreet glance at the black egg, and muttered between his teeth, "Brother Black Egg, I'm counting on you. Can this key help me out of this mess? I will do my best to satisfy any desire of yours." The black egg vibrated slightly, as if responding. In the next second, a blurred shadow appeared on its surface, with one strange finger pointing towards the key in Fang Xiaolun's hand, while the other slowly pointed towards the hole of lock on Yashin's chest. Fang Xiaolun was stunned. He looked at the key in his hand, and then at the strange circular hole in Yashin's chest. He had an epiphany. His voice was trembling slightly. "Do you mean I need to insert the key into his lock?" The black egg trembled slightly, as if it was feeling. Fang Xiaolun took a deep breath, squeezed the key tightly, gathered momentum, and advanced against Yashin, trying to fit the key into his chest in one fell swoop. However, Yashin only curled his lips disdainfully, his eyes full of mockery. Naive with a cold smile, Yashin swerved slightly to the side, easily avoiding Fang Xiaolun's surprise attack. His movements as fast as a gale. Then he raised his leg, and kicked Fang Xiaolun hard in the stomach. Fang Xiaolun was thrown into the air, and slammed violently against the cave wall, feeling a wrenching pain in his chest. He gritted his teeth and, despite the pain, got up from the floor. Cold sweat was running down his forehead, and his eyes were full of frustration. Damn, this guy's movements are really fast. I can't even get close to him. Yashin remained standing, laughing shamelessly, his voice full of contempt. And lol, do you really want to attack me with that pathetic little thing? It's ridiculous. How could this trick hurt me? Fang Xiaolun narrowed her eyes, and quickly analyzed Yashin's chest with her gaze. The round keyhole was clearly visible. He doesn't even realize he has this in his body. If that's the case, there might still be a chance, deliberately dropping the key to the ground, making a clear metallic sound. Then, feigning disdain, he shook his hand and scoffed. That shit is so annoying. My fists are more practical. He adopted a provocative posture, bent his finger, and lifted the corner of his mouth, with a defiant smile. Come on, you loser. Joshin's face darkened instantly, his eyes turned red with rage, and he advanced, grabbing Fang Xiaolun by the neck with such force that he almost lifted him off the ground. Who are you calling a failure? He gritted his teeth, burning with rage. He raised his hand, and slapped Fang Xiaolun hard in the face, so hard that her ears were ringing. However, at that moment, Fang Xiaolun took the opportunity to reach out, and quickly grab the key from the ground. He whispered angrily, "Black egg, bring it closer." The black egg trembled slightly and suddenly threw a fist-sized stone that hit Yashin's head like thunder. Yashin was stunned by the blow. His movements stopped instantly, his eyes slightly unfocused. Fang Xiaolun's eyes sparkled. Taking advantage of this unique opportunity, he shoved the key into the keyhole in Yao Tian's chest with all his strength. The key fit into the hole with absolute precision. Fang Xiaolun clenched her hands tightly, clenched her teeth, and turned the key sharply. At that moment, the mysterious masked man who had entered the cave opened his eyes, his face changed and quietly exclaimed, "Oh no." In the next second, a violent energy suddenly exploded from Joshin's keyhole. A strong ray of light came out of his chest, like a crack tearing through the darkness. The overwhelming energy directly hit Fang Xiaolun, instantly penetrating her pupils and invading her consciousness. An indescribable feeling of disorientation took over his mind. His senses were completely shattered, and his thoughts were violently distorted. The world was spinning, ominous whispers echoed in his ears, and his consciousness seemed to fall into an endless abyss. Moments later, Fang Xiaolun suddenly opened his eyes, his forehead covered in cold sweat, his heart beating fast. However, when he looked around, surprised, he realized that he was in a completely unfamiliar place. The air was filled with an infinite void, and the whole world was made up of countless spheres of different sizes. Fang Xiaolun's pupils contracted violently, her voice trembling slightly. Where the hell am I? Fang Xiaolun still didn't understand the situation when, suddenly, he felt a force pulling him to the side. Staggering, he was dragged by someone, and a low, urgent voice sounded in his ear. "Idiot, don't talk so loud. Hide." Before he could react, he was dragged away by the masked man, running desperately. They both ran like the wind towards a huge rock, crouched down behind it and held their breath. Almost at the same instant they hid, a shadow slowly enveloped the area. A strange-looking man and a giant one-eyed dog appeared nearby. "Tinos," the strange man said in a low tone, slightly tilting his head. "Did you hear a noise?" The one-eyed giant dog's pupil contracted slightly, and then he nodded slowly and replied with a strange voice. "I also heard a faint sound, like that of insects." Fang Xiaolun's heart was beating fast, and she pressed her body against the rock, covering her mouth tightly. Why are these two guys so big? It's as if they were a small mountain. The giant patrol car slowly scanned the area, but in the end, did not find anything out of the ordinary. His cold gaze turned away, and he turned around, disappearing into the darkness. Fang Xiaolun let out a long sigh of relief, only when the giant's figure completely disappeared, almost falling to the ground. He looked at the key in his hand and muttered, "This is the key that brought me here, right?" The black egg trembled slightly, as if it was responding, and then gently shook its head. Fang Xiaolun looked at the black egg with a desperate expression, eyes moistened. "I just wanted a quiet life. You're lucky, but you brought me to this damn place." The masked man's gaze fell on Fang Xiaolun, and a flash of surprise passed through his eyes. This guy managed to jump straight into the world of giants. He thought for a moment, and fragments of memory came to his mind. "I remember, that guy also brought me here. Although the memory is incomplete, I have some memory of that scene. If I'm not mistaken, this must be the territory of the synthesis of giants." The masked man pondered for a moment, and then whispered, "Never mind that now, we need to get out as soon as possible." Both of them ran quickly, looking for a way out, but all they could see were huge, gigantic, endless spheres, as if the whole world was full of them. On the way, Fang Xiaolun looked at the sky. The huge floating spheres were slowly rotating. They were countless, like a strange dome. He asked quietly, "What the hell are these things?" While pondering, the masked man suddenly raised his hand, motioning for it to stop, because a huge sphere in front of them was going through a strange transformation. Fang Xiaolun opened her eyes, her voice trembling slightly. "Is something coming out?" The masked man's expression became more serious, and he replied in a low tone, but with a hint of gravity. "The sphere of education is about to be produced." In the next instant, the huge black sphere trembled violently, and numerous strange cracks appeared on its surface. Soon after, boom! An indefinite object was ejected from within the sphere, like a kind of unformed life. The object slowly fell to the ground, its outline still indistinct, like a black fog. Pulsating. Fang Xiaolun and the masked man looked at that strange existence, and a feeling of uneasiness came over them. "What the hell is this?" Fang Xiaolun murmured. Soon after, the object began to solidify, and its shape became clearer. A faceless fishman appeared in front of them. The masked man showed a slight change in his expression, and, in a low tone, uttered 3 words, "Synthetic orcs." He looked around, his gaze falling on the countless floating spheres, his expression becoming more and more gloomy, and whispered, "It is no longer necessary to transform humans into giants here." At that moment, a suffocating feeling of oppression suddenly arose behind them. Fang Xiaolun's heart suddenly tightened, as if a gigantic beast was behind him. He slowly turned his head, his eyes widened to the fullest. A gigantic, indescribable eye, like a hanging blood-red moon. In the sky, so deep that it seemed to have no end. Then, a low voice slowly echoed out, coming from the depths of the abyss. "Found," the voice spoke in a slurred manner, charged with infinite indifference and judgment. "How dare you, little worms, invade the land of the educated?" Before the words were completed, a colossal creature emerged from the darkness. A huge one-eyed mastiff came out of the shadows. It was larger than any of the previous giants, and its single dark red eye was fixed on both of them, showing a sanguinary excitement. He opened his mouth and rippled, suddenly lifted his paw, and, with a terrifying gust of wind, descended hard on Fang Xiaolun. At the last instant, the masked man's figure moved sharply. He pressed his palm against Fang Xiaolun's head, and pushed him down. Boom! Fang Xiaolun's body abruptly sank to the ground, rolling to narrowly dodge a "it'll blow." In the next moment, the masked man concentrated his strength, and his body shot towards the sky like an arrow. A ball of strange green flames suddenly formed in his hands. The flames crackled, emitting a strange fluctuation of energy. The green flame, enveloped in a fiery shockwave, shot at the giant dog's neck. The masked man's eyes were sharp as blades, and he shouted in a low tone, "Hold him, you run." Fang Xiaolun gritted her teeth. Although he was full of doubts, he turned on his heels and ran away. However, after a few steps, his mind suddenly went blank, and then a sharp, cutting pain coursed through his body. From a distance, a pale hand made the gesture of firing a gun. Fang Xiaolun's head felt as if it had been hit by a real bullet, and blood gushed out. A drop of burning blood cut through the air, silently landing on the black egg and infiltrating the cracks of the shell. Fang Xiaolun's body became rigid, her eyes lost focus, and then she lost her balance, falling heavily to the ground. The black egg floated silently in midair, witnessing everything that was happening. The blood stains on the eggshell were spreading slowly, as if they were absorbed by some unknown force. Then, its surface suddenly burst into violent tremors. The black egg's emotion suddenly exploded. Black energy spread violently through the air, as if some kind of sleeping existence had been completely awakened. Fang Xiaolun's consciousness began to cloud over, and she felt as if her body was sinking, falling into an endless dark abyss. Damn, I'm going to die like this. I haven't found my real parents yet. I don't want to die. Just as despair invaded his consciousness, a strange and powerful energy suddenly invaded his body. The shell of the black egg began to slowly fall apart, and dark energy filaments spread out like veins, frantically injecting into Fang Xiaolun's body. This scene caused a flash of astonishment in the eyes of the giant in the distance. His body suddenly trembled, he ground his teeth and growled, this egg is playing with me. What's going on? My body is out of control." At the same instant, the black energy completely entered Fang Xiaolun's body. His body began to melt. The giant's face changed drastically, and a gleam of disbelief appeared in his eyes. "What's going on? He's melting." While this strange vision was happening, the liquid vibrated slightly, and a small drop of water floated out, shining with a deep luster. Soon after, the liquid began to shake violently, and the drop of water trembled intensely. In an instant, he quickly united into new human form. Soon after, the black liquid fiercely united, and a new figure slowly emerged. A man with white hair, and a body covered with black runes, suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils were deep and cold, and the black runes on his body seemed to move like living creatures, emanating a suffocating aura of power. The black giant's eyes widened, and an instinctive fear took over his heart. His voice shook as he said, "What the hell is this guy?" However, Fang Xiaolun had not made any moves yet. His gaze became deeper, and when he was about to take a step, the masked man's crisis instantly erupted. Lon's superficial gaze shifted to the side, his eyes suddenly became fierce, and without the slightest hesitation, his figure shot up. He jumped up, quick as black lightning, and advanced directly against the face of a giant one-eyed dog. Boom! The fists intertwined, and a violent force overflowed. The blows reached the face. Each punch carried a terrifying impact, and the giant one-eyed dog's head was brutally crushed, with blood splattering uncontrollably. At the impact, intense pain, he let out a terrifying roar. The giant dog became enraged, and suddenly retreated, its sharp claws tearing the air, carrying an unparalleled gust of wind, and violently striking towards Xiaolong. Xiaolong's body glowed, narrowly dodging the attack. As he landed firmly, his gaze was sharp as a blade. In the next instant, the power condensed within him, flowing down his meridians and converging towards the top of his foot. He took a sudden step forward, sweeping his foot through the air. A heavy kick, Lon's instep swept like a blade, and the force of the impact terrifying. It instantly exploded, hitting the one-eyed giant dog's chin hard. The huge body of the giant dog was thrown into the air, falling backward like a kite, with the rope cut off. Boom! He crashed to the ground. The force of the impact opened a deep crack in the ground and raised a cloud of dust. Xiaolong slowly picked up the leg. dark energy was still flowing around him. He turned gently and reached out his hand to help the masked man up. The masked man looked at him, his gaze falling on the black energy still flowing from the palm of his hand. His pupils trembled slightly, his expression was complex and surprised. However, before the two could catch their breath, they found themselves cornered between the dog and the man. At that moment, the giant one-eyed dog growled fiercely, and 3 sphere-shaped energy cores emerged in his head. Electric arcs. They jumped between the spheres, thunder roared, and the air was instantly torn by electricity, filling the environment with a terrifying aura of destruction. The masked man's face suddenly changed, his expression was filled with horror, and he growled, "This is not right. Run." However, before the words could be completed, a dazzling white-blue light suddenly exploded between the 3 train spheres. Then, an annihilation lightning that tore through the heavens and the earth shot out with a deafening roar, aimed directly at Xiaolong. He dies. The low growl of the giant one-eyed dog shook heaven and earth, but at the moment when the annihilation ray was about to engulf them, Lon's gaze remained calm and slightly extended a hand, with the 5 fingers slightly open. 1. The terrifying ray of annihilation, as soon as it touched his palm, instantly froze. The destructive energy, powerful enough to tear the space, suddenly stopped before his hand, as if it was suppressed by some invisible force. The giant one-eyed dog stared at Xiaolong's palm with his one bloody eye, unable to believe his eyes. The beam of light, powerful enough to annihilate everything, was really being blocked by a bare hand. Her voice trembled with fear. "No, it can't be." Lon superficially, slowly turned his head, his gaze falling on the masked man. His lips opened slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. The masked man frowned, his look was suspicious. "What did he say?" Black Obo shook his head, calmly translating. "He said, 1 at a time, no debts between us." The masked man was suddenly stunned, his face full of questions. "What does that mean?" Xiaolun suddenly realized that something was not right. He opened his mouth and tried again, but the result was, "Abba, Abba." She covered her mouth in despair, her eyes full of sore. "What's going on? Why can't I talk anymore?" Black Obo sighed without enthusiasm, his tone was flat. The fight caused a very rapid promotion, and its function, linguistics, has not yet adapted. The other man next to him added, "What he just said was, 1 at a time, no debts between us." Lon blinked, perplexed, pointing to himself, and pronouncing with difficulty, "A." Black Obo jumped up and instigated, "Stop Abia, use your big blow already." Big blow. Lon was stunned for a moment, and just when he was wondering, a whole set of battle technique deductions suddenly appeared in his mind. Every detail and every line of energy flow was clearly visible. He slowly raised his hand, gathering a dazzling sphere of light in his palm. The violent energy was spinning like a whirlwind, frantically devouring the air. Energy, erosion, death. The ray of light was like a divine punishment that tore the heavens and the earth apart. With a devastating impact, he advanced directly against the 3 thunder spheres above the giant dog's head. The giant dog ran away, and his huge body fell heavily to the ground like a giant object with the rope broken. The thunder spheres instantly shattered into pieces, and the impact of the energy explosion burned his skin and flesh, leaving him completely incapacitated. Witnessing this scene, the masked man's pupils suddenly contracted, and the ripples of emotion in his heart left him momentarily speechless. Slowly he turned his head and met Black Wolf's gaze, and the two, as they looked at each other, could not hide their disbelief. "That's too strong." Black Obo trembled slightly, absorbing the energy overflowing from Lon, causing his energy field to gradually stabilize. Lon took a deep breath, feeling his body finally returning to normal, and the uncontrolled power within him completely calming down. On the other side, the black giant collapsed on the ground, unable to move. His face was completely gloomy, and his gaze was fixed on Lon, and the masked man muttered, "Those 2 insects, each has an egg. Impossible, this is impossible." His fists clenched, his eyes gradually becoming insane. Not even Mr. Ghost Crow managed to resurrect the ancient egg. How could they possibly know? "I'm thinking too much." Suddenly, the black giant's communicator rang, and the low electronic sound echoed in the silent air. "Comrades, Mr. Ghost Crow went through the gate of the bronze mirror and brought the important character to the Garden of the Giants. Giants nearby, stay alert. Lon and the masked man heard the sound of the communicator at the same time, and their eyes immediately widened. The black giant slowly pressed the communication button, and the corner of his mouth slightly lifted, revealing a sinister smile. And great, Mr. Ghost Crow has returned. If we manage to offer these two people, it will be an excellent gift. Xiaolong's eyes changed slightly, his eyebrows furrowed, and he muttered, "That's an alarm signal, or he's signaling to his companions." Before the words had finished leaving his mouth, a strange, low growl suddenly sounded behind him. Xiaolong and the masked man quickly turned their heads, and saw, behind them, a monstrous creature with a distorted shape. Before they could react, more figures slowly emerged from the darkness. 1, 2, 3. In the blink of an eye, there were already more than 10 of them, and they kept increasing. These monsters had different shapes and sizes, twisted and scary. Some had several eyes, others were covered by black shells, and some had open and bloody mouths, dripping unknown fluids. Xiaolong's face changed slightly, and he muttered a curse. "What the hell are those things? There are too many of them." The masked man slightly raised his head, his eyes sharp, and his tone calm. "No matter what they are, let's cooperate, and get out of here first." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his hands, his fingers curling slightly. Blue flames danced in the palms of his hands, gathering a violent energy. In the next second, like an arrow shot from a bow, he advanced against the group of monsters. His hands danced with the blue flames, and wherever he passed, the monsters were instantly devoured by the fire, and reduced to ashes. Xiaolong's eyes widened in amazement. So hard. This guy seems able to easily deal with these monsters by himself, he doesn't even need my help. But soon he realized something strange. He could dodge the attacks of these monsters effortlessly. Strange. His eyes flashed slightly, and he muttered, "Why are the movements of these monsters so slow?" In the distance, the black and white egg's voice suddenly sounded, with a tone of doubt. "Master, are this kid's martial skills really that good?" "No." The man's eyes narrowed slightly, and his tone became low and cold. "It's not that his abilities have improved, it's that his very existence has slowed down the attacks of those strange insects. Now we can be 100% sure. That black egg is the egg of misfortune recorded in the ancient books." The black and white egg's voice suddenly turned cold, with a slight tone of excitement. "Anxious. Master, then we must take his power while we can. The situation is chaotic and full of danger. This is not the best opportunity." The black and white egg continued, its tone anxious. "But master, if we take the power of the black egg earlier, we will be able to get out of here faster, and rescue Miss Pill faster." The man's eyes darkened slightly, and his tone was cold. "There's no hurry. The most important thing now is to focus on the current situation." On the other side, Xiaolong jumped up animatedly, easily dodging a monster's attack. He looked at the surprised black egg, and excitedly said, "Black egg, look, I can easily deal with these monsters too." However, the black egg's voice carried a tone of urgency. "Xiaolong, you're not getting so excited. That giant will rise again in 2 minutes. Hurry, don't forget to take the key." Fang Xiaolong suddenly realized that he had almost forgotten the key. He thought quickly. The key, he had thrown it near the giant. Without a second thought, he turned sharply, kicked off his feet, and ran at full speed towards the place of the key. In the distance, the black and white egg's voice slightly decreased before taking on a somber tone. "That kid, where is he running to?" Lon was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he found the key. She was lying silently on the ground, with a slight oscillation of energy still remaining on her surface. But the moment he reached out his hand to pick it up, a feeling of danger suddenly arose. The Cyclops, with his one bloodshot eye, turned abruptly, fixing his gaze on Nora. The air was filled with an oppressive feeling. Lon's heart beat hard, and his hand barely touched the key. A furious wind whistled, and a gigantic fist descended with force. The Cyclops smiled ominously, his voice low and threatening. "What the hell? I finally managed to move, but now I'm paralyzed again." Xiaolong instinctively closed his eyes, and felt the devastating shock wave sweep over him. However, the unbearable pain that I expected did not come. He opened his eyes, and saw the giant's fist frozen in the air. Unable to advance an inch, the black egg floated in front of him, emitting a gloomy and mysterious glow. Xiao Long remained paralyzed for a moment, then smiled and gasped. I thought I was really going to die this time. Thank you, Black Egg, what's wrong with you? Can you hear me? Black Egg. Xiao Long looked down, anxiously calling the Black Egg, but it didn't respond at all. As soon as the words fell, the energy that was flowing on the surface of the Black Egg suddenly dissipated. The whole egg seemed to have lost its vitality, becoming inert and without strength, as if it had exhausted all its energy. Lon gritted his teeth, and suddenly bit the key with his mouth, while holding the Black Egg with both hands. Black Egg, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me like that. The Cyclops saw this, and his gaze intensified. A thought suddenly crossed his mind. It's true, it's that thing that's getting to me. A stinky smile curved the corners of his mouth. His voice was cold and threatening. Humph, without the help of that thing, where do you think you can escape? Xiaolong took a deep breath, held the Black Egg firmly, and his gaze became determined. Don't worry, I'm not going to let anything happen to you. The Cyclops abruptly raised his hand, grabbed Xiaolong, and coldly smiled as he lifted the corner of his mouth. Look, Bug, where can you go now? However, at that critical moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared in the distance. The Cyclops dog suddenly knocked down the giant's arm, so fast that he almost became an afterimage. The Cyclops opened his one eye wide, and shouted in surprise, Tinos, and great, you're fine. But before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly froze. Relentlessly, the giant dog completely ignored him, showed his teeth, grabbed like this, or Long by the neck, and lifted him up with a bite. Then he turned and shot away in an instant. Tinos, wait. The Cyclops froze for a moment, then his face suddenly changed. He roared. Tinos, what's wrong with you? Where are you taking him? Tinos. Long was surprised to be carried through the air by the giant dog. He couldn't help but frantically analyze in his mind. What's going on? He's helping me. It could be that the energy erosion technique is actually a manipulation or submission skill. Damn, this is amazing. He looked up abruptly and saw the masked man in the distance. Then he shouted, Quick, get up here, he's on our side. The masked man's eyes narrowed, and, without hesitation, he used his legs to propel himself into the air. Using the ground as a springboard, he landed firmly on the backs of the giant one-eyed dog. Meanwhile, the one-eyed giant watched his beloved dog running away with the enemy in his mouth. He froze in place, unable to believe what he was seeing, and muttered, incredulously, that his face became rigid. His thoughts temporarily stopped, and he was completely paralyzed. But, just a moment later, his one eye suddenly flashed, as if he had thought of something. A cold smile slowly appeared at the corner of his mouth. That egg can control Tiffin. If so, then perhaps we can use this power to retrieve Emperor Yuzen's Colossus corpse. Thinking about that, he couldn't help but let out a laugh. His tone carried emotion and the feeling of a successful plan. Yes, this time, I will surely manage to win the praise of Mr. Crow Ghost. On the other side, Xiao Long was sitting firmly on the back of the giant one-eyed dog. He turned his head to look at the masked man and asked, My name is Long, what is yours? You're from here. The masked man remained silent for a second, and then spoke indifferently. Southeast. I got here through a space jump, just like you. At that time, I was in the cave, and, noticing the anomaly of the engineer's egg, I followed him here. Xiao Long frowned slightly and muttered. Space jump. Could that be the black egg's ability? The black and white egg next to his desk vibrated slightly and calmly explained, Yes, that's his skill. So, this key is the key to return. However, at that moment, the black and white egg suddenly vibrated, and a strange energy filled the air. He had activated his devouring ability, and was trying to devour the black egg. Duan's face suddenly changed, his pupils contracted, and he shouted, Jin He, don't be impulsive. At the same time, the black egg felt something unusual, and the energy fluctuations were oscillating slightly. His consciousness suddenly awakened. Without hesitation, the black egg raised a black shadow, and hit Jin He hard. Don Yang reacted extremely quickly. He immediately reached out his hand, grabbed the black and white egg, and held it firmly in his arms. Xiao Long's eyes flashed, and he exclaimed in surprise, Black egg. Nigga, you woke up. Duan frowned. His tone carried a faint hint of helplessness. I didn't tell you not to act impulsively. Are you hurt? The black and white egg trembled slightly, and his voice carried a tone of guilt. Teacher, I'm fine. Sorry, I shouldn't have disobeyed you. However, at that moment, Xiaolong suddenly exclaimed, "Wait a minute. That's strange. That's a wall there." At their sight, a translucent, hazy wall was slowly emerging, like an illusion woven with light, spreading out before them. Xiaolong reached out his hand to touch her. Alma slid along the surface of the wall. He frowned slightly and muttered, "The texture looks a lot like with a wall. It could be that we are off the wall. So, that means our original world is on the other side of this wall." She looked down at the black egg in her arms. His tone carried a faint concern. "Tell me, black egg, are you sure you're okay?" The black egg's energy wavered slightly, and it responded with a hint of tiredness. "Fortunately, I activated my defensive reserve energy. I'm just a little tired, and unable to use my skills for now." Xiaolong slightly squeezed his eyes and repeated, quietly, "Defense, defense. That guy, Dark Once, was trying to attack you." The black egg remained silent for a moment, and then replied indifferently, "I don't know, maybe it was an unconscious defense, but, if too often, we shouldn't trust others too much." Xiaolong's eyes darkened slightly, his expression was complex, and he whispered, "Okay, I understand that. After all, after that incident, I don't easily trust others." At that moment, Duan looked at Xiaolong, his tone was solemn. "Well, we should not first organize the current situation, put our thoughts in order, and analyze this calmly." Xiaolong pondered for a moment, and nodded, "Yes, it's time to organize things." Don Yan pondered and said thoughtfully, "You said that, after inserting the key into the lock of the red egg soldier, you came here, correct? The black egg must have defined you as the middle of the door." Xiaolong frowned and repeated, doubtful, "Is the red egg soldier the middle of the door?" Duanna felt, yes, if he really is the middle of the door, and he is not here now, that is the best proof of it. Xiaolong messed up his hair, unable to help but mutter, "In the end, that key is still the big problem." He turned his head and looked at the black egg. His tone became serious. "Black egg, can you tell me exactly where we are? Are we really off the wall?" The black egg trembled slightly, and suddenly a ray of light shone on its shell. In the next second, a map was projected. It was a huge egg-shaped map, with different areas clearly marked. At the same time, the black egg deliberately marked its current location with a luminous dot. Xiaolong was stunned, his eyes wide and full of confusion. "I don't understand any of this. Then we are in another world in the form of an egg. This looks too strange to be the outside of the supposed wall." Southeast looked at the projected map, frowned. Suddenly, he noticed something, and his expression changed abruptly. He murmured, "No, this is not right. We are not outside the wall, we are still inside it." The light and shadow of the black egg flickered slightly, and his voice answered firmly, "Yes, according to the markings on the map. We are still inside the wall. This is the place we've always been." Seeing this, the black egg trembled slightly, and the lights and shadows cast a dynamic demonstration. "This is it, and this is me. So, we came all the way here." In the light and shadow, a faint trail marked his route, finally stopping at his current position. Xiaolong frowned, pointed at the large blank area on the map, and asked doubtfully, "So, what about that big part?" The light and shadow of the black egg oscillated slightly, and he explained in a neutral tone, "That is an unmanifested region." Xiaolong let out a sigh, astonished. "That whole area is not manifested. How big is this egg-shaped wall? Is this really just a small part of the world we live in? Besides, it doesn't even look spherical." The black egg emitted a slight vibration, and said in a calm tone, "That's a visual illusion, caused by your human brains." His father narrowed his eyes slightly, and said thoughtfully, "To be exact, it is the wall that is deceiving us, isn't it?" Xiaolong's expression suddenly became complicated, and he whispered through clenched teeth, "The wall, once again." The light and shadow of the black egg trembled slightly, and said quietly, "Sometimes, what you see may not be real." Lon's eyebrows furrowed even more, and his tone was full of trepidation. "So, what exactly is this wall? Is it some kind of living being? Could it be that we have been living inside a giant living being all this time? This is too strange." There was a second of silence ensued before Xiaolong slowly said, "All I know is that the wall is a living being with its own will. But if you want to know more, I think you should ask the black egg. He must know more than I do." The black egg moved slightly, and said indifferently, "I don't know. My memory point started the moment Lon and I met for the first time." Lon Xiaoluan frowned, and reluctantly insisted, "But you managed to draw a map, so you must know something." The black egg was silent for a moment, then slowly explained, "The map exists because I captured the singularity." Lon Xiaolun repeated doubtfully, "A singularity? What is that?" Don Nan made a small pause, then slowly said, "A singularity is a place where time and space are distorted. Right?" The black egg trembled slightly, answering in the affirmative, "That's right. Before we went through two singularities and they connected to spaces. That's why we showed up here all of a sudden." Panchala felt thoughtful, and then asked, "So, if we want to come back, we have to go through those two singularities, right?" The black egg paused briefly, and replied in a calm tone, "No, after I suckled her, they disappeared." Xiaolong's eyes widened, and he spoke anxiously. "What? So how are we going to get back?" The black egg turned slightly, casting the shadow of a key, and said indifferently, "Through the key. She's already memorized our starting position. As long as we find the door hole generated simultaneously with it, we can go back." Xiaolong frowned, thought for a moment, and then asked, "Is the door hole like the red egg soldier's lock from before?" The black egg moved slightly, and its tone was affirmative. "Exactly, that's the door hole that was generated simultaneously with this side." Lon rubbed his chin, and thoughtfully asked, "And is the door hole on this side, at the place we were just sent to?" The black egg emitted a faint sound, and continued to explain, "Originally, it should have been there. However, during the process of capturing the singularity, he was interfered with by an unknown force." The black egg glowed slightly, and he added, "That force, I'm afraid it wants to take us somewhere else. Fortunately, I copied the coordinates in advance, and stored them in the key. However, the hole in the door was intercepted by that force." Hearing this, Lon's expression suddenly changed, and he muttered angrily, "Intercepted? It could be the work of the Raven Ghost. If it's really him, this would be bad." He frowned hard, and hurriedly asked, "Black egg, where was the door hole intercepted to?" The black egg vibrated slightly, projecting a map, and a point of light flickered in one of the areas. "He's here, in a manifested area." Southeast looked at the map with a calm gaze, pointed to one of the circular areas and asked, "Black egg, do you know what this spherical place is?" The black egg paused for a moment before slowly saying, "That appeared along with the manifested area. I don't know what it is either." Lon frowned, as if realizing something, and asked surprised, "Wait, appearing together means that we can find him on giant Earth?" The black egg vibrated slightly, affirming, "Yes, since it appears. The hole in the door means we can find him here." Hearing this, Don Nan's face instantly changed, his pupils contracted, and an unmistakable expression of surprise appeared on his face. Lon Xiaolun narrowed his eyes, watching Don Nan intently, while whispering discreetly, "To the black egg. Black egg, I can be completely sure. They've definitely never been here before. From the way he calmly handled the monsters on the way, I knew something wasn't right." After thinking for a moment, the black egg decided to ask Don Nar directly. However, Xiaolong quickly stopped him, speaking in a low voice, "If he does not tell us voluntarily, it means that he does not want to. We are not going to complicate ourselves. But one thing is certain, he definitely knows a lot." Lon's lips curved slightly, his eyes darkened a little, and he continued in a low voice, "If in the end we don't manage to find the hole in the door, then he will be our last resort. Therefore, we must keep him under surveillance. We can't let him out of our sight." He looked at the black egg again, his tone heavy with anxiety. "Black egg, there's really no way to restrict the location of that inner door hole any further." The black egg moved slightly, and then calmly replied, "Don't worry. In fact, we can use the vision sharing function of the key." Lon was a little surprised and asked, "Does the key have a vision sharing function?" Lon frowned, his eyes narrowed, and asked in a low voice, "Use the key. How do we do it?" The black egg moved slightly, and calmly explained, "Since there's a connection between the key and the door hole, the visual information that the door hole can see can be shared with us through the key." After saying this, the black egg floated slightly and took the key. He pointed the key at Lon's head, his tone soft and low, "Don't be afraid, relax. Then, close your eyes." When the key touched Lon, it immediately emitted a strange fluctuation of energy, and circles of invisible air fields spread out in all directions. Lon felt dizzy, and suddenly the world changed. When he opened his eyes again, his vision was completely different. This is the perspective of the door hole. Wow, the area under the semicircular membrane is, in fact, a city. He looked down surprised and saw hands. This hole in the door is really connected to a person. Connected. Then he's an escorted prisoner. He looked up slowly to observe the escort. A woman sitting on a raised seat, with a cold and majestic posture. Xiaolong's heart beat quickly. Her pupils contracted as she murmured, "It's her. That woman is in a high position. She must be the one responsible for intercepting the door hole." However, as he continued to watch, the woman seemed to notice something. His eyes narrowed slightly in the direction of Xiaoban's gaze. The mysterious woman outlined a slight smile, with a small bow at the corner of her mouth. Slowly, he raised his finger as if to snap it. The next second, Lan's vision began to become blurred, and the scene in front of him slowly closed, plunging him into darkness. When his vision returned to reality, Lan suddenly opened his eyes, his heart freezing. And a layer of cold sweat instantly ran down his back. "Damn, she saw me." Noticing Xiaolong's strange state, the black egg anxiously asked, "Xiaoban, what happened?" Xiaolong's expression was serious, his eyebrows furrowed as he whispered. "The hole in the door was defeated by a mysterious girl. I suspect that girl is the one responsible for intercepting the power of the door hole. The most important thing is that he seemed to have seen me." The black egg vibrated slightly, and its tone was low while analyzing. If the hole in the door is connected to a living being, then during the process of sharing vision, there will be a slight change in the pupil. If this young woman is strong enough to intercept the shared perspective, then the possibility that she noticed you is extremely high. But besides that, did you pay attention to his environment? Hearing this, Xiaolong took a deep breath, bent down, and sketched a rudimentary drawing on the ground with his hand, saying as he drew, "I saw a city. It is covered by a translucent, circular and white membrane, and the whole city is enveloped under this membrane." "That's right." He pointed to a small figure in the drawing and added, "From what I heard in the screams a moment ago, I can tell that the hole in the door is a woman, and her hands are firmly trapped." Don Nan looked at the sketch Xiaolong had drawn, narrowed his eyes slightly, and after a moment of contemplation, asked if his hands are tied. Then the identity of the hole in the door would be that of a prisoner or some kind of escort. "Also, did you notice anything else?" Xiaolong frowned, carefully remembering everything he had seen from the perspective of the hole in the door, and whispered. The woman who intercepted the hole in the door was completely dressed in white, and did not look very old. However, there were two other people next to him. They were in a cave, standing at the entrance. Looking in the distance towards the city surrounded by a semicircular membrane, Don Nan's expression slightly quivered, and he asked in a low voice, "Did the other two people see their faces? Or was there something distinctive about the way they were dressed?" Xiaolong tried to remember and slowly shook his head. They were considerably larger than the woman in white. They were wearing capes with hoods that completely covered them, so I didn't see their faces. But I'm not sure if they were giants. At that moment, the black egg suddenly vibrated, and a slight concern could be heard in its tone. "Ritlin, I forgot to tell you something a moment ago. Did you notice that the number on the key was decreasing?" Xiaolong was slightly surprised, and his gaze instinctively fell on the key. He frowned. "What does that number mean?" The light and shadow of the black egg flickered slightly, and his voice sounded calm. "That is the time of existence of the key. When the countdown reaches 0, the key will disappear." Xiaolong's face instantly changed, his pupils contracted, and he stuttered from sunshine. However, at that moment, his ears picked up a strange sound. "Don't talk, there's movement." Don Nan's gaze suddenly turned to 0. And he whispered, "We can't stay here any longer. We need to get out of here quickly." But at that instant, Don Nan's face suddenly changed. His pupils contracted sharply, revealing a look of extreme shock. Xiaolong felt a cold touch on his back, and slowly turned his head. What he reflected in his pupils was the face of a strange woman. She had silently appeared behind him at some point, like a distorted specter attached to his back. Xiaolong's neck tensed. Cold sweat ran down his forehead, his mouth slightly twisted, as he muttered under his breath. "What the hell?" He looked down suddenly, but discovered that something had wrapped itself around his abdomen. "What is this?" "And vines." He tried to free himself, but, no matter how hard he pulled, the vines tightened around him, as if they were alive and contracting. "Damn it, I can't get out." Xiaolong fought with all his might, but the vines were holding him so tight that he could hardly breathe. He gritted his teeth and roared, "Let go of me." Just as the situation was about to become critical, another man slowly stepped out of the darkness. Don Nan's eyes flashed, and he quickly adjusted his posture. His muscles tensed as he prepared to act. However, the man did not show any concern about his hostility. He slowly walked forward, reached out his hand without hesitation, and grabbed the black egg suspended in the air. His gaze was deep and cold, his mouth slightly curved upwards, and his tone carried an unmistakable indifference. "This black egg, an ancient heirloom, can I borrow it? In return, I can tell you where this city is." Xiaolong's heart suddenly shot up, his pupils contracted, and a storm roared in his mind upon hearing those words. Relic of the ancient egg. Why did he call the egg black like that? Who the hell is that? Xiaolong's face darkened, and he looked at the man and woman in front of him. His tone was low, with a slight questioning tone. "Since when did they start following us?" The woman smiled slightly. His tone was provocative, with a hint of casual disdain. "Since you were at the place of education, playing hide and seek with you. And the others," but he interrupted the sentence significantly. The corners of his mouth curled with contempt. "They really are slow. They really waited until now to find us." Xiaolong's mind instantly exploded, his heart shot up, and he whispered in sunshine. What? Did they really follow us since that time?" The man saw that they were taking too long to respond, and his face suddenly darkened. A trace of impatience appeared in his eyes as he exploded into a cold and irritated tone. "Fuck off, I'm asking how." Xiaolong gritted his teeth, shot an angry glance at the man and retorted, in an icy tone, without giving an inch. "How? You guys tie people up, that's how you ask for help." The woman let out a light laugh, slowly extended her arms, and circled towards Olin. His tone, playful but cold. "To ask, the emperor needs to ask something from you." She snorted disdainfully. His voice suddenly flew out, looking cold. His gaze was as sharp as a razor. "Don't force the situation." Su Dest narrowed her eyes and said temptingly, in a slightly lowered tone, "So, what you are saying is that our negotiations failed." The woman laughed softly. His tone was kind, but tinged with a lethal chill. "Ah, in that case, I'll kill that man in the mask. You wouldn't have a problem with that, would you? The owner of the ancient egg relic." As soon as the words fell, the man known as the Emperor suddenly attacked, his body transforming into a quick shadow, as he advanced against Don Nan. However, a miraculous scene occurred. The Emperor's figure unexpectedly pierced through Don Nan's body without any resistance. Don Nan suddenly opened his eyes, his entire body tensed, his heart filled with awe. "What's going on?" "He passed through my body." Before he could react, the Emperor had already moved. Behind him. Then, the Emperor's figure continued to move in and out of Don Nan's body, so fast that it seemed like a blur, with no discernible pattern. Don Nan looked at him, more and more anxious, and growled in a low tone, "What the hell is he doing? Why does it keep going through me?" Suddenly, Don Nan's pupils narrowed, as he felt a strange oscillation in the air. He gritted his teeth. "There's something weird. Damn it. This time it's a physical attack. Hemph, using a clone to distract my vision, and then attacking with the physical body." Don Nan's mouth curved slightly, his gaze gradually turned cold. His body sank slightly, ready to counterattack. He murmured, "Well, now I understand your style. Wait for me to answer you." However, he let out a loud laugh at you, with a tone of amusement and contempt. "So, what you're most afraid of is actually yourself without the mask." Don Nan's face suddenly changed, his pupils contracted sharply, and he roared furiously. "Damn, how dare you! To spy on my heart." The Emperor gave a slight smile, opened his hands, and spoke in a provocative tone. "That's ridiculous. It's the first time I've seen someone be afraid of their own face without a mask. What the hell is this?" Don Min took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down, and watched the Emperor's actions with sharp eyes, speculating in his mind. This guy is creating an explosion by compressing the air, right? It was then that Xiaolong suddenly spoke, his tone serious. "Don Nin, don't be fooled." He fixed his gaze on the Emperor, and said firmly, "This guy didn't even take a single step away from the place where he started." Don Nan's heart suddenly sank at those words, and his face instantly turned pale. What's going on?"